My name is Arun Gupta. I'm the Vice President and General Manager for Open Ecosystem Team at Intel. You can find us all about at open.intel.com or subscribe to our podcast at open.intel.com/podcast and catch us at Twitter as well, open at Intel. Today, I'm very excited to talk about Rust. Let's get rusty right away. So, I have the two most qualified and the talented people on this panel to talk about Rust. Hi, Beck, and hi, Joel.
Hey there.
How you doing? Thanks for having us.
Wonderful. Let's start with introduction, maybe. No, so let's get started.
Sure. I'll start. I'm Joel Marcy. I'm Director of Technology at the Rust Foundation, which basically means I support the engineers who work at the foundation and the technical initiatives and programs that come out of the foundation. I'm actually a former Inteller in a past life long ago. But just before coming to the foundation, I used to work at Facebook/Meta, where part of my job was as Meta's representative on the foundation board of directors. And I found out there was an opening at the foundation and loved what I saw here. So I decided to pursue the opportunity. And here I am. Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks.
Oh, that's beautiful, actually. Yeah. How
Yeah.
you transition your day love into your actual work. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
All right, Beck.
I'm Rebecca Rumbul. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the Rust Foundation. And as you can imagine, my job is kind of overseeing what the foundation does, helping to set strategy, working with the board, working with all of our stakeholders, especially, our wonderful platinum members who keep everything going with their contributions, and obviously working with our directors such as Joel to kind of set a long-term goal and vision and strategy for supporting and stewarding the Rust programming language. It's been, funnily enough, it's been only 2 years, I think, since I came on board at the foundation, and I was lucky enough to get Joel to come over to the dark side with me. And it's been great. We've had a really great 2 years of growth and setting up really great programs.
Yeah, I mean, that growth is definitely something I want to touch upon, but let's get into the history of Rust. How did the language came about to be?
So the legend goes that Graydon Hoare, who was the original author of Rust, got very frustrated by the elevator in his apartment building. It kept crashing, so the software kept crashing, I should say. So he was confronted with no elevator and having to walk up, I think, 21 flights of stairs to get to his apartment. Graydon was a very special person, and he on that 21 floor climb was obviously thinking that there's got to be a better way to address some of these kinds of memory bugs in software that keep bugging and keep inconveniencing people in the simplest things, such as getting an elevator. So he was working at Mozilla. He was awarded a kind of fellowship there to think about this, to game out what whether this could be done. It went from there. He kind of created Rust, and as everyone can see, it's gotten way out of hand. That was 2006, I think, when he started working on it. The first release was in 2015, and that's not a long timeline, really. That's not a lot of history. We're what, 8 years after that first release now, and Rust is more popular than ever.
That's beautiful. You would think that all these wonderful thoughts would come on a run or on a shower, but that's not true, because here he is climbing 21 flights of stairs, and he's getting this beautiful idea to write a new language, which is awesome, because not only you are keeping yourself physically fit by climbing that many stairs, but you are actually fixing the world problems as well.
It just goes to show what a remarkable human being he is, because I would have been dead after 10 flights of stairs and, like, you know, just concentrating on staying alive, let alone like writing a whole new computer programming language.
Oh, that's a beautiful story. Now, what do you think has changed, or what triggered over the last few years? I mean, it was created in 2006, took about 10 years, kind of stayed consistent, in a hippie circle. But then over the last few years, it has just exploded. The language is all over the place in all possible use cases. What changed?
So
Yeah.
I could probably do a little thought here before handing over to Joel, I think, for his view. But I'd say one of the key things has been the fact that the language was spun out of Mozilla. Mozilla obviously incubated and loved and nurtured Rust for many years. But I think, as you know, as a responsible parent, shall we say, they recognized that Rust needed to kind of stand on its own 2 feet. It needed its own kind of structure, its own governance, its own independence to enable it to flourish. So that I think that independence gave a lot of companies and a lot of potential users a lot more confidence that this wasn't just something that, you know, could be cancelled by one organization, or, you know, subject to the whims of one organization's strategy, or, you know, budget changing. You know, a lot of organizations came together collaboratively, jointly, to say, we think this is great and we're going to invest in it. So I think that kind of catalyzed a lot of confidence, a lot of growth in use, and a lot of adoption. But that's obviously the kind of soft side of things. I think Joel probably has a lot more to say on the technical side.
Yeah, I mean, what Beck says is absolutely right. I think, you know, since Graydon's epiphany in the stairwell to now, I mean, you know, Rust is about providing a programming language that tries not to sacrifice anything, right? So, like, you know, safety, performance, you have a big community, robust features, libraries, and stuff like that. And there had been this generally accepted mantra, for example, that you can have only a secure programming language like Java, or a performant programming language like C, but you couldn't have your cake and eat it too. And Rust is one of those languages that can actually provide both. And I think as people started to realize this, you know, the growth kind of continued. So assuming like you consider Stack Overflow a reputable source, Rust has been at the top of the developers' most loved language for 7 or 8 years now, right? You mentioned like the first release of Rust came out in 2015. As soon as that release comes out, right, you know, 7+ years now, it's 2023. So every year since, you know, the first Rust release, it's been at the developer, you know, the top of developers' most loved language. So people have started to take notice. But obviously love doesn't necessarily mean adoption, but you know, I think we're kind of nearing an inflection point. And I think there's a couple of factors that come into play here, right? The language itself is relatively approachable, particularly from those that come from a programming background. The project is open source and has a really vibrant community supporting it. And the focus on security in recent years has certainly given people reason to look at languages like Rust to see if it can be used to make their own products more secure. So yeah, I think just kind of as the times have come, you know, where we're kind of converging on like making sure everything's secure, but we want to make sure everything still runs fast. Like Rust kind of would just hit into that tornado at the right time.
Beautiful. So people are literally making a rusty cake and eating it too. No, because it's because of performance, all of that. So I love that analogy. Now,
and it's shaped like a crab too. Obviously, the cake. Yes.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So now, what are the growing pains? You know, because as the community is growing bigger, you know, probably there were a handful of maintainers to begin with, then it grew, and then it further, and now it's expanding. What are the growing pains that community is experiencing today?
I don't think Rust is unique in this. I think, you know, all open source projects to some extent have, like, you know, grapple with scaling up. You know, and it's not even exclusive to software development. You know, this happens across sectors. You start off with a few trusted individuals and you all know each other. Maybe you all actually sit in the same office, so you can kind of just, have a quick chat about things. And then all of a sudden, people take, the thing you've built is amazing and everyone loves it. But that means then that you've got to kind of accommodate all these new people, different ideas, different time zones, different cultural practices, different working practices, and different ideas on the future and where things should go, or what priority should be. So I think it's no different from any other community, but I think obviously Rust is a lot newer than a lot of other programming languages. So this is just a problem that is part of the growing and maturing process. And everyone. The great thing about the Rust community is almost universally considered a very welcoming and very supportive community. It's got one of the best it's one of the most diverse programming communities, I think, in the world. So the great thing is there's always someone there to tap on the shoulder and ask for help, and it's normally very forthcoming. But yeah, in terms of, I think, just governing how much growth and how many new people and how many new, cool, exciting things could be done, it's always going to be a problem. And yeah, I think Rust is still in that process at the moment of trying to figure out how to do things at scale, while still making it a really welcoming and fun place for everyone.
I think too, just to add on to that, the Rust project in and of itself is mostly a volunteer-driven organization, right? And so, when things are first starting out, those volunteers, kind of can focus on, certain things that they kind of want to do. But as people start using the language, and getting involved in the ecosystem, wanting to see new features, they may like submit pull requests for a bunch of pull requests to add new things to the language. Those volunteers have to start managing that community in that way, and not just like focus on things that they might want to be working on. And so that's I think that's a growing pain as well, to making sure that the volunteers themselves are still happy being volunteers. And I think the foundation, we're set to hopefully try to help relieve some of that potential stress as the language grows. You want the language to grow. I mean, in some sense, it's a good problem to have, but you also want to make sure that those that are actually making sure that the language continues to flourish are well taken care of as well.
That's wonderful, actually. And I think, Beck, as you mentioned, the community is very welcoming, very inclusive. I think that's the key. So no matter what the growing pains are, because we are all learning and evolving from it, making it a better community. I think that's really the key and the crux here, that it is welcoming, it is inclusive. Come tell us what's working, what's not working. Well, on that line, I have a question from Matt. Howdy, Matt. Matt and I used to work together at Couchbase, actually. So his question is, for a newbie, what would you say the center of gravity is for the community? Issue tracking, some forums, some IM. Where should a newbie lurk to learn?
Yeah, I can take this and Beck, you can add on. So there's a few places depending upon kind of what you're interested in. So there's a few forums online. So for example, there's a Rust community forum on Discord that is there for people that are actually writing Rust code, like actually the end users of the language, so to speak. So if you're like wanting to understand, learn how Rust is used, you want to ask questions, if kind of newbie questions, that's like a great place to go onto that Discord channel. The Rust project, if you're like really interested in like contributing to the project itself, they use another chat-based tool called Zulip. That's where all the Rust teams, all the Rust volunteers, all those that are tasked with making sure that the Rust language is awesome, that's where they hang out. And so if you're like, hey, I want to contribute to the compiler, but I don't know where to begin, there's like a literal compiler stream that you can go ask and say, hey, are there some issues in GitHub that are marked, for new Rust stations, or something, however they're going to label it, and you can go and try to find some stuff to kind of dig your feet into. So between like the GitHub and how they label their issues, good starter task or however like that. And then those chat forums, that's like a really good place to start. And obviously the documentation, they have like, the Rust cookbook that you can go and start just kind of going down the list of trying to learn the language itself. So a lot of good resources for you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Matt, for asking that question here. So let's ask, what is the role for the Rust Foundation in all of this? What role does the Rust Foundation play?
So we are the legal guardians, we're the legal stewards of the Rust programming language. So it's our job to make sure that this baby is well fed and nurtured and grows into something that is useful and performant for everyone. So we mostly, we take care of the boring stuff. We're here to do all the boring stuff. So all of our amazingly talented developers and programmers and Rust enthusiasts can actually get on with doing the cool stuff that they're really interested in. So we take care of all the legal stuff, trademark. We take care of all the financial stuff. If you're an open source project, we need funds. So we need to sign contracts. We need to get finances in so that we can pay for things like the infrastructure, which is hella expensive. We are here to make sure that we can provide some kind of engineering support for the ecosystem so that it doesn't just fall over one day. So 24 hours on call for the crates.io package repository. We pay for an infrastructure engineer so that we can do great stuff with the very kindly donated resources that some of our member companies provide to us so that we can make the experience better for the Rust engineers out there. We promote the language, we advocate for it. We aren't one of those organizations that says, we're a hammer and every problem's a nail. Rust isn't the best thing for absolutely everything, but it's the best thing for a few things. And some of those things are really important. So we try and make sure that we're speaking to companies that are looking to migrate to Rust. We make sure we're speaking to government officials that are looking to regulate the open source space, because we want to ensure that open source stays open and usable for everyone and helpful for everyone, and that no one is, no poor individual coder is made liable for a bug that, they're not being paid to maintain. So we do a lot of that kind of advocacy as well. Trying to kind of put money into the ecosystem to make sure that, communities in Asia are able to kind of talk and connect with communities in North America and in Europe, making sure that the project as a whole is supported. There is a lot of support we would like to provide the Rust project, the maintainers that are developing and maintaining the language. Actually, my job, a lot of it is fundraising. People see me coming and they're like, oh God, Beck's going to ask us for money again. So mostly my job is asking people for money. Joel has the way more fun job at the foundation because, the role of the foundation on the engineering side, that's what Joel is taking care of. So he's taking care of, well, Joel, you can say the fun stuff with security and info and all that, right?
Yeah. I mean,
before we get to Joel, I think Beck, you summarize it really well. You do all the boring stuff so that Joel can do all the fun stuff and keep others doing the fun stuff as well. I love the way you put it. And I think the other part that I also grew up from it is open source stays open. It's not just for Rust, but for the broader open source movement as well. And I've seen you over the last couple of years at different events. And every time I see you, I always see you with a wonderful smile on your face. So I'm always looking forward to when am I going to see Bex? I think not everybody sees you like that. Let me tell you that way. And the last part that you mentioned is put money in the ecosystem. And that fundraising is super important because that's what, in my opinion, really keeps the language sustainable. These maintainers, hopefully they are incentivized by their employers to contribute full time. But if not, somehow they need to earn the bread. So I think in that sense, you're doing all the right things to keep the ecosystem thriving.
Absolutely. And, Arun, you've seen this in all sorts of open source ecosystems, right? It's really, even amongst those of us that work in the tech industry, there is still this very kind of baked in underlying assumption that if something is on the internet, then it is free. And it might be kind of, oh, I can pick up this code for free, but it doesn't maintain itself. Bugs don't fix themselves. Code doesn't review itself. There is always a human or a kind of resource or time cost to all of this. Even, with the foundation, crate, if you're a Rust coder and you go to crates.io and you're like, yep, that crate, yeah, I'm going to get a bit of that and I'm going to have a bit of that, have a lovely time, smorgasbord of ingredients to build whatever you're building. It's free for you to go and get stuff from there, but the Rust Foundation is making sure that we are hosting that crates.io package repository, right? That's not free. That's someone somewhere is paying for the hosting of that. It's almost, so much cost is about things that people don't even see or think about because, oh, well, it's on the internet, it's free, it's open source, it's free. We try and raise awareness about that as well. Like, this is, I know many people have said it before me, it's free as in puppy, not free as in beer.
It's always a free as in puppy. You can get a free puppy, but it's like a family member. You got to take care of it. So I want to come back to the fundraising part in a little bit, but let's hear from Joel all the fun things that he does at the foundation.
Yeah, so I think there are kind of three primary vectors that drive. So we have about 10 people at the foundation, and half of us are technology folks. So and I guess as Beck said, we do a lot of exciting work. So there are three primary vectors that drive the work of like the technology team here. So the foundation board, the Rust project, and outside funding for specific programs and initiatives. Like a few I can name off the top of my head, right? Like we have a cloud compute program, for example, that where we help provide and support infrastructure to allow the Rust maintainers access to cloud development machines to actually test, debug, and write Rust code for the Rust project on really beefy compute, so they don't have to do these things on their laptop. And that program came out of a discussion from the board, right? We decided that was going to be a good thing to have happen. Our hiring of our infrastructure engineer to work full time on making sure that the Rust project infrastructure is supported, efficient, always running. That came out from a request from the project team, and so the foundation was able to help accommodate that. And the big program that we're working on now is our security initiative, and that came through many discussions of our wonderful executive director, Beck, working to help get us funding from folks like Alpha Omega and AWS to allow the foundation to do work to ensure that we can have Rust and its ecosystem remain as secure as possible. Because, as we all know, security is top of mind in all aspects of software development, open source, industry, government, and we want to make sure that Rust, and we actually want to collaborate with other memory safe languages as well. We want to make sure that they're at the forefront of the applicable technologies to help solve a lot of the security problems that exist out there. The security initiative is a really big one for us, and we're doing a lot of great work there as well.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And security is something that is very close to my heart. I recently got elected to OpenSSF as the governing board chair. So anything I can help to improve that connection, that relationship, I'm all in. So just feel free to reach out to me any point of time on that.
Yeah, we might take you up on that. Thanks so much for that offer.
I'm here. You have my email address. Beck knows how to reach out to me. By all means, I'm accessible fully.
Yeah.
Beck, I want to go back to Rust Foundation. And I think we were talking about this earlier. This is sort of the website for Rust Foundation. Walk us through what does the structure of the foundation look like?
So the Rust Foundation operates a little bit differently to some other open source foundations. We're broadly similar, but I think this is open source. It wouldn't be open source if we didn't want to reinvent the wheel a little bit, right? So it's it's slightly different to just how some of the other foundations operate. So we're a 501c6. We are registered in Delaware in the US, and that kind of means we're essentially like a trade association. So we have two classes of membership. We have platinum members, corporate members who pay to become members, but we also have project directors who are on the board representing the project. So this is our current board of directors. So we have our platinum members who get a board seat as part of their membership package. We have a representative of our silver membership on there, but we have 5 seats specifically reserved for representatives of the Rust project. And we have a structure where we have to have, like, all major board decisions have to have a super majority of votes. So it gives a lot of power to the community. The project directors, there will always be 5 seats for project directors as long as the bylaws are current. And yeah, basically any board vote that is on a substantial issue, the project directors are able to vote together and say, do you know what? We don't like the way the corporate bloc want to take this, so we're actually going to vote no and block the ability for that to go forward. And I think that kind of speaks to how much the Rust Foundation values the opinions of the community and the engagement of the community, and hopefully gives the community comfort that the foundation cannot be kind of co-opted by any one source. It can't just be kind of taken over. People can't buy the Rust Foundation unless they intend to buy every single person in the community as well, because these community representatives are there to champion the interests of the maintainer community. So I think that's a really robust structure in terms of like rooting everything that we do and ensuring our decision making is always kind of I suppose scrutinized and approved by members of the community. So we've got, as Joel said, we've got about 10 staff members at the moment. Look at, aren't they all lovely? Half engineering, half kind of administration, finance, that kind of thing. We've got lots of lovely members without whom we simply wouldn't be able to operate. So we have platinum members who sit on our board. Most of the, like AWS, Google, Huawei, and Microsoft, they were founding members. So these were organizations that from the very start said Rust is worth investing in, and it's worth investing in collaboratively, again, to kind of demonstrate that this is not just a one company show. This is a cross industry investment. And we have gold members and silver members as well, who we absolutely love, we value very much, and we are proud to be an associate member of the OpenSSF as well, amongst other partner foundations, because OpenSSF in particular, because as Joel said, we are very, very committed to the security aspect. Rust makes a lot of security promises, and we want to make good on those. The other thing I kind of want to draw attention to, it's kind of unique to the Rust Foundation as well, is that we have this community grants program. So where I spoke a little bit earlier about how important it is for us to make sure that we're investing in the community and we're investing in the ecosystem. We know that a lot of the maintainers in the Rust project are extremely well employed. They have great jobs in some of the biggest, most influential tech organizations in the world, but some don't, and some people aren't able to get a job at a Google or an AWS, or maybe don't want to, or maybe live somewhere where there's, that kind of employment is just not possible, but they may be incredibly gifted and incredibly committed maintainers. So we have this grants program that enables us to kind of award money across a couple of different programs to support the maintainers of the Rust programming language. So we can award fellowships over a year. They aren't lucrative, but it's enough, especially for younger people or newer people coming into the ecosystem that want to be able to devote some time to becoming a maintainer. If people have got like a project idea that they think actually with a bit of funding, this could actually solve a lot of problems, or this could actually make the Rust experience better for people. We've got kind of project grants for those things. So yeah, I think that's something that we've been pretty proud of, and that has been pretty well received by the community. You know, we're not talking huge sums of money here, but we're talking about like enough to enable people to actually concentrate on just getting something done, and having that work be valued. We also have a hardship grant as well, so that, you know, anyone, anywhere, at any time could suddenly, you know, have a financial issue, or, you know, find themselves in a country that's all of a sudden at war, or you know, lose their job or whatever. So we also have a bit of a safety net for some of our maintainers as well, which means that they can apply to us if the worst happens and they just need like a small grant to enable them to kind of keep on living for a month or two until they can get back on their feet. So we, you know, this is a kind of package of support again for kind of the community that means that hopefully we can keep them supported and make sure they feel valued.
Yeah, that's a very noble gesture, actually. And my next question was on those lines, that what do you do to the long-term sustainability? But these are the kind of efforts that you're already putting in to ensure the not just the foundation, but the language, and most importantly, the maintainers and the contributors around can continue to live a life while they can contribute to the Rust Foundation and the Rust project.
Yeah, so obviously, yeah, these are not things that are going on forever. These are relatively short periods of time. And as I say, they're relatively short amounts of money. What we're hoping with these kind of grant programs is to kind of help people to become either more confident, more employable, or to, you know, fill a gap. I think one of the main things that one of the main things we worry about, I think one of the main things that all open source projects worry about is that pipeline. You know, the bus factor is a constant headache. What we, you know, again want to do with something like this is try and turn someone from a casual, I really like to spend more time on this, but I can't afford to because, you know, I need to earn money, or I'm a student and I want to mentor over a few months to gain confidence to become a proper maintainer. You know, we're trying to kind of convert those people from almost on the cusp of being really, really talented and valued maintainers and into becoming actual maintainers. And, you know, this is hopefully just one step on their kind of Rust maintainer or community journey, after which hopefully they will go off and work at great organizations and do great things, and we can give that money to the next generation.
That's beautiful, actually. And I love that line, good software is built by happy, well-supported people, because that's really the intent here. You know, if you invest in the people, then they're going to build a good software as well. Fantastic. Let's get a little bit technical here. Help me understand, how are the new language features in Rust developed? Like, can anybody propose a feature? Is there like a BDFL? Is there like, how does that feature creation work through its way?
Yeah, so it's generally consensus driven. So the Rust project generally works through what is called an RFC process, or requests for comment, for major new features. So someone would write a proposal, put it onto the RFC GitHub repository for discussion and debate. After some time, assuming assuming the proposal, the writer of the proposal just wants to withdraw it because for whatever reason, if there were some comments there that made them reconsider or something like that. But assuming that period goes pretty well, it goes into a final period of comments where the specific Rust project team responsible for that language feature. So let's say someone proposes a change to the compiler. The Rust project has a compiler team. They would be the team responsible for actually merging and then supporting that new feature. That team would go through a checklist and approve or reject the feature in question, taking into account feedback from the community, feedback from the project, feedback from themselves. And if that team ends up, I think it's a majority of the team have to approve. I don't think it's 100%, but I could be off there, but it's at least a majority of the team approves it. Then the feature moves forward and gets integrated into the project.
That's beautiful. And
so very consensus. Yeah, very open and very much a lot of consensus.
what does the governance model of the language look like? Let's say, like Matt asked the question, I'm a newbie, I just want to learn. From there, what would the path look like for me to ultimately becoming a maintainer of a compiler, for example? What is the governance model?
Yeah, exactly. So the teams, there's existing teams themselves. And so if someone new wants to go and join the compiler team or the infrastructure team, the key thing for them to do is to get involved and show their dedication to the work that's going on there. So yes, you might be new, but if you start doing little, even like a documentation update to start, and then maybe fixing a bug that's an issue in GitHub, and then fixing a bigger issue or fixing multiple issues, and that team actually sees a lot of the investment and the time and the dedication that you're putting into it. They actually would reach out and ask, hey, are you interested in actually joining our team? Or the person who's actually doing all that work could request to be part of the team, and then they would discuss and hopefully approve their membership to that particular team. Like I was talking about before, if you're like generating RFCs and you're getting those approved, and the community seems to appreciate a lot of the work you're doing, and you're helping that specific part of the project, you can become a member of the project. Because remember, it's a volunteer organization, and it's generally hard to think of scenarios where someone who's really serious can't be an asset to that volunteer team and organization.
Yeah, so it's a very duocratic approach in that sense. You do things, docs, bugs, bigger issue, multiple issues. Then somebody is watching because it's a volunteer-driven organization. So then, yep, let's elevate the position where you can not just do things by yourself, but help others be successful too.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, if you join like one of the project teams, there's some measure of responsibility that you're going to be involved in, yourself, reviewing RFCs and attending team meetings, and just making sure the team itself is running as smooth as possible. So, it's not just joining the team, getting your name on the website that shows that you're part of the team, and then you're just kind of backing off doing nothing. There's obviously you need to be serious about being part of that team and making sure others in the community are feeling supported by yourself now.
I think it's as we talked about duocratic approach. You have to keep doing it. It's not like you have earned the honor and the medal goes on the wall and that's it. No, you're going to kind of prove yourself to the maintainers, to the core team, and to yourself that you are into it. Once the investment goes away and you slack off, then possibly you may be kicked out, which is perfectly fine.
Yeah, and we have members. Some of the engineers on the technology team at the foundation are also members of specific project teams, because obviously those engineers are dedicated full time to work on specific parts of the project, and they all see how much great work they're doing. So it was pretty easy to make the decision to make them part of the team as well. So so there's kind of a relationship between like the foundation and the project, where we have like engineers kind of working, doing foundation things, but also like first class members of the project as well.
It's a very symbiotic relationship, as I see, because they're all working in full lockstep. Essentially, the end goal purpose, as Beck called about a boring function, but then there is a non-boring function as well. Both of them had to be completely lockstep to enable each other.
Yeah, it's not all, I would be lying to say it's always 100% smooth sailing. Even within the teams themselves, there's some disagreement about how things are approached. But in the end, I think we all generally come together and, make, a consensus driven decision to do what's best for the overall project, even if there was initial disagreement to begin with, for example. So there's always room for improvement. Generally works pretty well.
And I think the big statement really is absence of conflict is apathy. So in a way, I'm glad that there is a healthy conflict, because that means people really believe into it, because that's when the conflicts happen. Because if people don't believe in it, I don't care what the other person is doing, I'm just going to do my own thing, and then you are drifted apart completely.
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful. Joel, you were also telling me, how widely the language is available in a popular tools. So talk to me about that. Like, if somebody is new to Rust, what would be the easiest way, like, for them to get started? Like, let's say I want to learn Rust. What tools, languages, with tutorials, features are available for me to get started? And I'm going to bring up the screen that you were sharing with me before the webcast. So that screen is live here.
Before I get into that, I'll say, so there's, without taking a position on any particular way to write Rust, you can use the command line. There's a bunch of command line tools and that you can use to just go to your favorite terminal, use Vim, Emacs, Nano, whatever you like, and use command line options to write and build Rust programs and libraries. There's also a lot of IDE support. The two main ones that I can think of that probably are the most used are VS Code, and before Rust Rover came out from JetBrains, people use IntelliJ with the Rust plugin on the IntelliJ side do Rust. Now IntelliJ actually has a dedicated Rust IDE that's like specifically for Rust that just came out in like alpha, like announced in September. So it's like really early stages, but you can see that JetBrains is kind of really getting really dedicated to Rust as well. So now to go kind of learn Rust, there's a couple of different mechanisms. There's the official Rust documentation website. So if you go to rustlang.org or rust-lang.org, there might be a dash in there, and you'll see there's documentation, just hello world, get that going. There's the actual Rust book, the codified Rust cookbook to go and kind of learn the language. And like I said before, there's all the forums that can help you get started as well. And there's tons of Rust learnings on YouTube and those sorts of things. So what I'm showing here is VS Code, and it's pretty easy to get Rust integrated into VS Code. There's a couple of you have to like install Rust itself on your machine, and then there's a couple of if you can see on this side, there's a couple of extensions that you add. Like if you want to debug your code, you can use something like Code LLDB. That's kind of the native debugger that you can utilize for Rust. You can then also have the Rust Analyzer, which basically provides the official language support for Visual Studio Code. So you can have things like IntelliSense and autocomplete and those sorts of things as well. So there's documentation on the VS Code website tell you exactly what to do to get that going. And what I have here is the canonical Hello, and since we're talking Intel folks, Hello Intel program. And with those extensions installed, you can kind of see that they actually provide a bunch of tooltips. They provide like run and debug options right within the code that you can just click on. Obviously, VS Code itself has menus at the top to do a bunch more things, but the VS Code tries to give you some hints and like what are the most commonly used commands that you want to do. Obviously, I want to run this program, so I'm going to press run here, and you can see the terminal would open up, and you'll see Hello Intel being run right there. So what that did when I pressed run is it actually invoked the Rust compiler, rustc, and invoked that on the .rs file, which .rs stands for Rust source. So main.rs compiled that code. Then that creates here you can see can create an executable called main. And in the background, it ran main.exe, and that's what you get in the terminal there. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the background. You don't really have to think about that so much. The IDE will just kind of take care of that stuff for you. Now, this is kind of boring. So I thought I'd just add a little bit more flavor to this code. So Rust has, like many other languages, the ability to import names, libraries that you want to use. So for example, if you're familiar with Java or C, anything like this is like the IO library for Rust. So standard library and IO, which gives you like read-write access to terminals and streams and that sort of thing. And so I thought I would just show you a little bit of that. So here, instead of just Hello Intel, you can create a guess the number game and have input. You can input your guess. And I didn't get to the point where I didn't write the code yet to where it's like, no, you're wrong, higher or lower, anything like that. But you can kind of see you can extend that to do this. So if I run this now, builds again, Hello Intel, guess the number, input your guess, and you guess 4. So there's Rust provides a very robust standard library. So like you can get things like IO and that sort of thing. But the big benefit of Rust are the third-party crates that people develop, and the Rust community. The Rust project purposely keeps the standard library kind of manageable because they want the community to be thriving and creating libraries for crates.io that people really want to use and people are going to support. And so they're very community driven in that respect. So, use the standard library, but also go to crates.io and see a bunch of other crates around, random number generators and async and like all these things that you can think of. You'll find a lot of libraries to do. So, yeah. And VS Code will help you, if you're a new person to Rust, kind of let you kind of learn the language and help guide you along as you go. And one more thing I should say, the compiler itself for Rust is super awesome and super valuable because it basically tells you the mistakes that you make and tells you how to fix it. I could try to do something here. I wonder if I take something here and try to run it. Right. So yeah. So you saw I took the word mutable, and what mutable means in Rust is that variable can actually change. So look, consider changing this to be mutable. Oh, okay. And you add mute and it'll compile again. So like the compiler is going to be a really good friend for those who are really serious and starting to write code. VS Code and the actual tools within the Rust ecosystem are going to help you get there.
That's wonderful, actually. I think one thing that I'm getting out of this is with IntelliJ creating a dedicated IDE kind of shows the tipping point of how popular Rust is becoming and how developers are loving it. So that's wonderful. And I think the second part that I'm coming at is I was meaning to ask, what are the core characteristics of the language that makes it memory safe? And I think you kind of touched upon one part of it that, hey, you can't have immutability. Everything has to be immutable in that sense. I think, talk to me a little bit about those aspects that actually make the language memory safe.
Yeah, so you can have mutability, right? But you have to be explicit about it, right? So not like, for example, with JavaScript where you can just set a variable to 3 and then later on just set it to like a string, or there's rules that govern Rust memory safety, and in the documentation it's called the borrow checker, right? That's Rust's secret sauce. And the borrow checker is like the key component to making Rust as memory safe as it is. So it handles data ownership, and all of it's done through the compiler before the program is run without like needing a garbage collector at runtime. So it knows if you're trying to do wrong things with data before you even try to run the program, which is great, right? Because you don't want your memory problems to occur when you're running the program. That's when you get all these vulnerabilities like, Log4j or I don't know, SolarWinds or whatever they are. Having the compiler know what those rules are and those heuristics, and making sure that it tells you what you're doing wrong a priori, shipping your code, that's like a great thing. So you can think it in like less technical terms. You can think of data and memory as like a discrete widget, and the borrow checker ensures that anyone can look at that data, right? But the widgets can only be modified by one entity at a time. So that's what Rust does, and makes sure that only the variable or the entity that's supposed to be able to modify something can modify something, and that's how keeps Rust memory safe.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I was listening to one of the fireside chat with Linus, I believe at the Open Source Summit, where he talked about that they're experimenting with Rust modules in the kernel and Linux kernel. So tell me, what are the prominent places where Rust is used today?
Yeah, so Rust gained its prominence as a systems programming language, and it's obviously still good for that type of work. But you mentioned, right, like Rust being added to the Linux kernel, I believe it's the first language allowed in the Linux kernel, which is historically really risk averse since C. So anyone who's watching here, if you know anything about the Linux kernel and how much time and discussion it takes to fundamentally alter the trajectory of its development, that's like a really, really huge deal. And the fact that Linus and others see that Rust won't negatively impact performance, while also providing the safe features that the kernel might want to have, it's like a game changer. And it's slow. I mean, it's going to be slow going. There's a lot of code in the Rust kernel, and they're starting with like drivers and kind of bindings and stuff like that right now. But give it some years, and you'll see Rust be a first-class citizen in the kernel, I believe. Now there's other places like enterprise apps. You can use Rust there. I think, in fact, like a lot of our members, like I think Red Badger is one of the members I can think of. They explicitly promote Rust for the enterprise, like on their website. Here's how Rust can be used in the enterprise, and they actually talk about it. So it's quickly becoming a go-to choice for enterprises for the very reasons that Rust is so popular. Performance, safety, cost efficiency, testability, all these things are kind of hard to ignore. I would say probably Java and other languages may right now still kind of own the enterprise app space, but Rust is definitely an up and comer there. You can even use Rust in web applications, right? You think of it as a systems programming language, but it can also be integrated into web applications as well, with something like WASM or WebAssembly supporting it. So WASM allows multiple languages to be compiled into like a common portable target. And so you can have a mixture of Rust, and you can have JavaScript, and you can have all these things that are compiling down to this portable target. So you can have a web application that has a mix of a bunch of languages. There's also frameworks written in Rust, like something like U, that allow you to create like directly multi-threaded front-end web applications with the support of WASM. And I think finally, you could write like something like Kubernetes could theoretically be written in Rust. I think I saw the other day a GitHub project. I don't remember the name of it, Nano CI or something like that, but it's basically trying to be a Kubernetes alternative written in Rust. So there's people thinking about this, and people thinking about different ways that Rust can be used just outside of like a command line application or something in the back end. It's being used at the metal, it's being used in the kernel, it's being used in the enterprise, being used on the web. And all these things continue to grow. And I think you'll see in five years or so, it's going to be pretty prominent in all those areas.
Yeah, and I love the way you're explaining it because, for if you think about the history of Rust, for good 8, 10 years, it was kind of, under the radar. Then 2015 first release came, it exploded. Then it kind of stayed under the radar. Then it exploded again. And I think that's where the point is right now, where Rust is sort of becoming the main commodity, where everybody is starting to experiment it in the enterprise app, in the web apps, in the web assembly, in different modules. And then, hopefully in the next, few months, years, whatever that time is, that explosion will happen again. Because a lot of the times, like the reason, say, for example, Spring Boot is so popular in enterprise applications is just the library and the ecosystem around it. So hopefully Rust will mature to the point where there's enough libraries where people can think, oh yeah, this is by default my new choice as I'm building the applications.
Yeah, I think you're going to see. I think there's hundreds of thousands of crates, on crates.io, which provide it's much and kind of any functionality you can think of, maybe off the top of your head. But you're going to see that number grow, and see that community and the third-party libraries become even larger as time goes on as well, I believe.
I think we're on the cusp of something, actually. A lot of people I've been speaking to in industry over the last kind of year, they've been like, oh, do you think Rust is gonna, go large, get adopted? Can you see it happening? Where do you think Rust is going to be in a couple of years? And I think in 3 to 5 years' time, that won't be a question anymore. I think the argument will have already been won. I think we're in a weird kind of time at the moment because there's lots of, I think there's a lot of skittishness at the moment in the tech industry. The kind of slowdown at the beginning of the year affected everyone. And I don't think CTOs want to be jumping into the unknown, I think, which Rust adoption is for a lot of them. Rust, I keep speaking to people at CTO level and they're like, oh, my engineers and my junior developers are talking to me about Rust and saying, why aren't we building this in Rust? And I don't know, because people at that level, a lot of them don't know Rust. So it's not something that they learned when they were kind of learning to program. So I think there's a little bit of reticence there to take a step into the unknown. But I'm pretty sure, it's already happening quietly inside of organizations. And I'm pretty sure that, given the US government's support of migrating to memory safe languages, given the support for memory safe languages from all of the big tech houses, I think it's only a matter of time. Bring me back in 3 years and tell me I'm wrong if that's the case. But I really think that, in a couple of years' time, the landscape will look very different.
I completely agree, because I was at the Secure Open Source Summit at White House a couple of months ago, and that's right about the time when CISA launched their narrative about memory safe languages. So I think it's only a matter of time. I don't think it's a if question, it's a when question. And then when the ecosystem is ready, when the enterprises are ready, when federal government is convinced, apparently they have created a narrative, it's just about the enterprise exec leaders to be convinced that, oh, that's the route we need to go to. We have just about a couple of minutes. I want to ask last question here. How is the language evolving to meet the needs of AI, and vice versa?
Oh yeah.
We should ask ChatGPT that.
Yeah,
That's touche. That might be the best answer to what I've ever come up with. But so I think generally folks think of Python, right, when it comes to AI, and that's for good reason, right? The major frameworks like PyTorch and TensorFlow use Python and provide their APIs, or at least their primary APIs in Python. But a lot of the frameworks themselves are written in languages like C++, underneath. And so I think that's the key, right? If C++ can be used to create these AI frameworks, then it stands to reason that Rust can serve as an alternative for those frameworks as well. And one thing that makes it promising is the major frameworks like PyTorch and TensorFlow are adding Rust bindings so that their users can access those frameworks with the Rust API. So they're making the conscious effort to say, hey, we obviously we provide you a Python API, for example, but we know that Rust is coming. We're going to provide you a Rust API so you can access our frameworks as well. There's a good website online called arewelearningyet.com. Just like it sounds, arewelearningyet.com, that basically provides a catalog of all the work showing where Rust is being used in the AI space, and it's actually pretty extensive. I think you'll see. I think you're going to see Rust more and more in AI as well.
Wonderful. And back on your suggestion, I just did a quick search on ChatGPT, and here's what it says. While Rust may not be the go-to language for all AI development, its unique features make it a viable option for certain aspects of AI, especially in scenarios where performance, safety, and concurrency are critical considerations.
Well,
I should have just.
Good, but I think Joel's is always better.
I was like, I could just use ChatGPT and said something very similar. Okay.
Folks, this has been a wonderful conversation. Is there any question that I should have asked that I didn't get to ask today?
I think we covered a lot of ground today. It's been super fun. So yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, and I think just to reiterate, if you want to get involved in the Rust project, fully open sourced at github.com/rust-lang, and you'll see a bunch of projects there, like the core language, all the RFCs, some training, and like I said, get on Discord and Zulip for communication. And you'll be happy that you did when you see all the good stuff that's happening.
Perfect. Thank you, Beck. Thank you, Joel, for this wonderful hallway conversation on Rust. Thank you. Hopefully everybody had fun, and I'm going to end the stream now. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having us.